Tusko is a 35-year-old Asian elephant bull, fairly new acquisition at the zoo. We've only had him for a couple years now. Soon after we got him, in fact, before we got him, we knew he had an issue with his left tusk. He had the tusk amputated about 13 years before we got him. Unfortunately, that did not go real well, and he developed a chronic infection in there. Pretty soon after we got him, we knew that we'd probably end up having to do some kind of surgery on him to clear that up. After we got to know him a little better and got a better look at it, we determined that we needed to actually remove the entire tusk. The first thing we talked about was getting him to lie down in the position we needed him to be in to do the surgery. The first part of his training was to get him comfortable lying down on his right side, and then we needed to have him lie down in a very specific location. So we decided where the surgery was going to occur. We bought a very large waterbed, and we also bought a mat that was the same size and same color and same material as the waterbed to use for training purposes. The goal was to get him to lie down in the middle of the mat, and then on the day of the surgery, he would lie down on the waterbed instead of the mat. Once he was asleep, we would inflate the waterbed underneath him while he was sleeping on it. So when he was anesthetized, he wouldn't be lying on a hard surface, crushing his muscles or his nerves during the procedure. Once we got Tusko comfortable with the idea of coming in, lying down on this weird little black mat in exactly this position we needed him to, we started adding in other elements to the training. The first thing we were going to need him to do when he came into the room was to present his left ear to us so we could put a catheter into one of the veins in the back of his ear. The trainer, Bob, would call him over, and he would lean up against the bars and pretty much stick his ear through the bars so the veterinary technician could get the ear and put a catheter into him.
Static. Point away. Static.
The veterinary staff and the keeper staff would hook up every morning, and this became part of Tusko's everyday routine and our everyday routine. And so it was second nature for all of us by the time the actual surgery day came. On the day of the surgery, we tried to keep things as quiet and normal as we possibly could. There were about 30 people overall involved in the whole procedure, but we tried to keep them out. So it was going to be just another day for Tusko. We wanted him to come in. This time we actually put a catheter in the ear, and then he went over and he would lie down in the same area that he's always lied down on. And this time, once he laid down, we went over and actually did an injection of an anesthetic into the ear catheter that made him go to sleep. It's a very potent drug, though, and it took less than half a teaspoon to anesthetize this enormous 13,000-pound elephant. Once we decided Tusko had received enough of the anesthetic drug in the ear catheter, it was kind of the moment of truth came, and we had to actually go in the room with him, and none of us had been in the room actually with Tusko before. So it was a little bit scary going in and making sure that it was safe to pronounce him anesthetized. And luckily he was, and it was safe for everyone to come in. And so once we gave the all clear signal, the first people to come in were the anesthesiologists. And what they did was establish an airway for him, so they passed a very large tube through his mouth and into his trachea, and we connected that to a large anesthetic machine to supply enough volume for Tusko to be able to breathe through. That was connected to an enormous respirator that used a weather balloon as an air reservoir, and the intention there was if Tusko didn't breathe well enough, we could take over breathing for him. Once those guys were all set up and were happy with the way things going, the surgery team came in and started assessing exactly what we needed to do to get that tusk out of there. The first thing we needed to do was kind of core out the center of it, and so we took a very large drill bit, drilled out all the soft material that we could until we got to the really hard plug that was about 12 inches long down at the base of it. And we just started boring 3 holes into this material. And kind of as we got these holes deeper and deeper, it would weaken the tusk and we could break it up in fragments. And so we would drill a little bit, break it up, drill some more, break it up, and just kind of chase the tusk further and further into his head. Boring through this tusk material was very laborious. There was about 4 or 5 of us who actually did the drilling, and we would rotate Each one we would get exhausted and we would hand it off to the next guy to do. Part of the thing with any surgery is you're always under a time constraint, and the quicker you can do any surgery, the better it is for the patient. This is going on about 4 hours now, which was the limit to really how long we wanted to wait in there to work on the tusk. And so after about 4 hours, we were starting to wrap things up, and we knew at that point that this was going to be a 2-surgery procedure. We cleaned everything up in there as well as we could and left it in a good state so that when we had to come back again, it'd be easier for us to start up and kind of make headway right away. So about 6 weeks later, we had got everything scheduled for the second surgery. During the time between the 2 surgeries, we had maintained Tusko's training, so he was still coming in. We were still going through the motions of putting a catheter into him, getting him to lie down where we needed him to. The morning of the second surgery, though, things were a lot different for Tusko anyways. Again, we tried to keep everything the same, but Tusko came in through the doors, and you could tell he just stopped, which he had never done before. But, elephants are so smart. I think that he definitely had remembered that last time he went through this under these circumstances, he woke up with a really bad headache, probably. And he paused for about 30 seconds, kind of checked everything out, and then he decided to come over. And really, the whole procedure was in Tusko's hands. If he hadn't have decided to cooperate with us that day, we wouldn't have been able to do it. We induced him a little bit quicker this time because we had a better handle on the dose he needed and kind of started up right where we had left off. So the second surgery, we had a little bit different game plan. We basically drilled until it looked like we were at the end of the tusk. And then that made it a lot easier for us because we knew exactly how far in we had to go. As we could tell that we were getting closer and closer to the end, we let the anesthesiologist know. We try to give them warning, like we think we got an hour, or we think we got a half an hour. And so what they're doing is stepping back his anesthesia during that time. As we were finishing up and letting them know, he was ultimately turned completely off the gas anesthetic. What that allowed them to do is when we were totally finished and everyone cleared out of the room, they could give him a single injection through his ear, which would reverse the anesthetic that was holding him down. And pretty immediately they're aware and fully awake and ready to stand up. We did that, and Tusko started waking up within about 2 minutes. And then a couple minutes later, he was able to roll himself up onto his chest and finally stand up. Now we're kind of in the long recovery phase with Tusko. We anticipate it'll probably take 9 months or more for him to heal from this. Right now, I think the worst of it is by far over for Tusko. Any discomfort he had from having his tusk removed, I think, is for the most part gone. He seems very comfortable and happy and back to his normal life.